got my motor running for a wild weekend. It's finally Friday, I'm out of control. Forget the working blues and let the good times roll.
Well, hello, fellow constitutionalists. On this video here, I want to share with you some of my observations as I've watched the Kavanaugh hearings for the past 2 weeks. If you don't already know, I did an apology video that's going to be posted up before this one. And I have fibromyalgia, so I wasn't able to do a lot of things even during the hearings themselves. So I've been making some notes while I've been watching them, and I just want to share some of these observations with you. This is not an exhaustive list. I know there's a lot of people out there really getting down in the minutiae of things, but these are some major takeaways for me anyway, and maybe they are for you. Maybe there's something here that you may have not have thought of while you were watching the hearings, or maybe you haven't watched the hearings and you're wondering if you should watch them. I think you should watch them. I honestly do. If you can watch them on, especially what happened yesterday between Ford's testimony, Christine Blasey Ford, and Bret Kavanaugh, Judge Bret Kavanaugh, and their testimony, and just the stark contrast between the two of those, how the Democrats are handling it, how the Republicans are handling it, and again, just some of my observations with that. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go to a slideshow here, and we're going to talk about these things, and I'm just going to make a few comments on them. Now, the first point I want to make is Democrats have shown throughout this process from the first day President Trump nominated Judge Bret Kavanaugh that they would oppose this nomination, and according to Senator Chuck Schumer, do everything in their power to delay this process. Now, I don't have all the recordings, and I'm not going to share them with you. If you want to look them up, you can find them on YouTube and stuff like that. I just watched the hearings and haven't really went back and gotten any links. But there have been a lot of Democrats that have said that they want to push this past the midterms in hopes that they'll take the midterms and it'll keep the seat open throughout the rest of this election cycle through 2020. Which is incredulous to me. It sounds very childish to me because part of this is because there's been Democrats says this would be payback for Merrick Garland. And I have made some observations. Of course, some of my younger progressive friends don't understand the Constitution and how it works. They think everything they see on TV, especially when it comes to politics in the Senate, is exactly how things are supposed to work, regardless of what the Constitution says. Now, the role that the Senate has in the confirmation process with presidential nominees, whether it's the Supreme Court or filling a bureaucracy head or other lower courts and stuff, is advise and consent. And they were saying, I think it was Senator Cornyn was saying there's some 150 nominees that they still have to get through. And I'm like, it's the midterms already, and they still have 150? And this is because the Democrats have been dragging their heels, had obstruct, delay. And more than one Senate Democrat has said that it's because of Merrick Garland. Now, if you don't know who Merrick Garland is, President Obama nominated him 10 months before the end of his presidency. And so the Senate, this lame duck president, it's so close to the end of his, matter of fact, if you think about it, elections are in November, and so you have November, December, and then January, you have 3 months. So basically it was 7 months until somewhere around 7 months until the election. Not that far. And so the Senate Republicans decided that they weren't even going to hold a hearing, which under the Constitution, they're not obligated to do. And this is where a lot of people fall down on this. They're not obligated to do it. I don't want to get off in the weeds in that. I just wanted to point that out, that people need to go back and read their constitutions. So that was a type of advise and consent. They just were not even going to hold hearings for Merrick Garland, period. Okay, deal with it. And I would say the same thing to Republicans if the shoe was on the other foot. Don't cry about it. Deal with it. Okay? But the shoe isn't on the other foot. The Democrats are the minority party in the Congress. And they're acting like a bunch of spoiled brats who lost and can't get over it. Okay, second point. After close to 60 days out from the nomination and 4 days of testimony, Senator Feinstein shared a letter from Christine Blasey Ford on the 11th hour, or at the 11th hour, about sexual assault allegations. This is important because this goes to my number one point about how the Democrats have shown who they are throughout this whole process. It was nothing but delay, delay, delay. And this is something that Chuck Schumer said it was going to happen. And this did happen, okay, in the 11th hour. And matter of fact, I said in some of my tweets over yesterday, it was 5 minutes to midnight that they did this. Then my point 3 is for the next 10 days, the hearings on Ford's claims were delayed for one reason or another. Chief among these was Ford's fear of flying, although she flies frequently throughout the world for vacation and family and stuff like that. She couldn't fly to D.C. At first to testify when they wanted her to last Monday, or this past Monday, and then they said Wednesday, and then finally they just said we're going to have the hearings on Thursday, earlier in the week, and Senator Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the committee, did something smart, I believe, on Tuesday because he has to give the committee 3 days notice. On Tuesday, he scheduled a vote. And that really, for Friday, and that really enraged the Democrats. Okay? So that was point number 3, about the 10 days. And we're talking about Judge Kavanaugh and his family being dragged through the mud, going through literal hell at the hands of progressives. Death threats, kids at school, making fun of their daughters and stuff like that. Just horrendous. Just horrendous, okay? So now we get into the fourth point. Ford's lawyers. And I thought this was Lindsey Graham brought this up. And I picked up on this during the hearing. Ford's lawyers failed to advise her that the committee would come to California to get her testimony. Oh, I can't fly. I got fear of flying. Okay. We'll come out there and get your testimony out there. Not a big deal. But during the hearing, she acted like and even testified that she didn't know that was an option. So there's a lot of inconsistencies going on here, and it's on the Democrat side, it's on Ford's side and her lawyer. Okay? This next point's a big one. If you watched testimony yesterday, I was looking for this. I don't have a dog in this hunt, folks. I'm a constitutionalist. I want to see the best justices on the court that are strict constructionists, that are original intentists. And I think Judge Kavanaugh is really close to that. Is he perfect in it? No. I don't think we're ever going to get a perfect Supreme Court justice in that, but he's really close to that. Matter of fact, I would say he's about as close as you're going to get except for Clarence Thomas. But during the testimony, during Ford's testimony now, there wasn't any evidence brought forth to prove her allegations. And while answering questions, she did great damage to her credibility. Mitchell, the prosecutor from Maricopa County that the Republicans brought in to ask some of the questions, caught her in a big credibility lie or big credibility issue with the flying, caught her in a big credibility issue with the polygraph, asked her, did you pay for the polygraph? Well, I don't know, she goes. I'm thinking, wait a minute. I didn't look to see how much polygraphs were, but polygraphs aren't cheap. They can't be that cheap. And you would know if you paid for it or not. Okay? She didn't know if she could pay for it, or if she paid for it or somebody else paid for it. Other ones. She didn't know, she couldn't pick out in her testimony where she lived when she was 15. She couldn't pick out the house. She said the neighborhood, but couldn't pick out the house where this alleged assault took place, the time, or the date. And this all goes to the credibility. She said a friend of hers was with her, but she testified when she ran out of the house, she ran out of the house alone. Now, if she was just sexually assaulted and narrowly escaped with her life, according to her testimony, why would you leave your best friend in that situation? Or if your best friend was there, why didn't your best friend chase you down and find out what was going on? Why'd you leave the party so soon? A lot of credibility issues here in this testimony. But the Democrats and the progressives out there want us to disregard that because she was so brave and her testimony was courageous and was full of credibility. And I kept asking the question, are we watching the same hearings? Are we watching the same hearings? 6, none of the folks Ford said who could corroborate her testimony did. Matter of fact, they either said they didn't know Bret Kavanaugh and was never at any parties that he was at, or just flat out denied that they were at a party with her around that time. Just flat out denied it. So they're right there, and this here goes to the FBI, and there's some late breaking news on this, and I'm going to do another video on that real quickly here, but this goes again to her credibility because she cannot find any corroborating evidence or witnesses to back up and prove her allegations. And then 7, even though Kavanaugh, being the accused, didn't have to prove anything, laid out his argument with a lot of credible evidence in the form of his calendars and the notations and marks on the calendars that he had. He had an affidavit, a signed affidavit from Mark Judge, his friend, the one that Ford accused of helping him in this sexual assault, a signed affidavit under threat of the law that this didn't happen. He wasn't there, doesn't remember the party, it just didn't happen. And the Democrats were dancing up and down, stomping the floor like a bunch of babies, saying that's not good enough, we need him to testify. And he gave some pretty good reasons why he doesn't want to be in the public. Okay? Now, with the calendars and with a signed affidavit from the only other person that was said to be there, no, or one of 4 people, I guess, that Ford said was supposed to be there, said he wasn't there, didn't know anything about it, couldn't believe that Bret would do something like that, Judge Kavanaugh would do something like that, is very compelling evidence for Bret Kavanaugh's, Judge Kavanaugh's defense. But again, the misnomer that the Democrats were pushing throughout yesterday with Bret Kavanaugh was that why wouldn't you, if you're innocent, why wouldn't you want the FBI to investigate? And a lot of progressives out there, I go on Twitter and I check out, I got certain feeds and then I look on their feeds and I check out other feeds. They're on these progressive feeds. And these people got the whole thing totally wrong. They absolutely got it wrong because they agreed with the Democrats. All Kavanaugh would have had to do was sit there and say, she didn't prove anything, did not bring forth any evidence, I'm innocent, we're done. And that would have been the end of it. That should have been the end of it. But throughout the whole questioning and grandstanding of the Democrats, they were getting this one key point wrong. He had nothing to prove. He was under the presumption of innocence, or innocent before proven guilty, and the accuser has the burden of proof to prove their allegations. And since Ford did not prove her allegations with any evidence, any credible evidence, and just bringing allegations is not evidence, Alyssa Milano, or Dianne Feinstein or Camille Harris or Kolbach or Senator Stolen Valor Blumenthal. That's not evidence. It's not even credible. Again, I don't know what hearings that they were watching, but there was a definite agenda going on with the Democrats there. There really was. But I think Bret Kavanaugh, in his 45-minute opening statement, he was showing some righteous indignation, righteous fury, because his good name, his family, his reputation, and his livelihood was being drawn through the mud on what he considered false allegations and everything else that came with that. And I kept telling people on Twitter yesterday, you poke the wolf, this is what you're going to get. You poke the wolf, you're going to get it. And you've seen a wolf there in Bret Kavanaugh. Now the progressives out there, they were he was acting like a spoiled little brat, like the seats owed him. I don't know where they got that from. And I even asked a couple of them, nothing back from them. What would you do? How would you react? How would you act? Would you have this righteous fury that Bret Kavanaugh had with these false allegations, especially if you knew they were false? None of them answered me. Not a single one. Not a single one. Now, I don't doubt, honestly, I do not doubt something happened to Christine Blasey Ford. But I don't believe it was done at the hands of Bret Kavanaugh. I don't believe that. And I think she needs to look elsewhere. That's the first thing I want to say. I think what Dianne Feinstein did holding that letter back was a disservice to Ford and Kavanaugh. If she'd have brought it out right away when she got it and they started investigating it right away back when she first got it, 45 days before the date she released it, this could have been done in quiet. Would have been able to keep Ford's identity completely off the radar. They could have sent investigators out there to get her statements and have the Democrats out there with her. None of that happened. And this turned into a media circus. The Senate Judiciary Committee, at the hands of Dianne Feinstein and her 9 other co-conspirators, turned this into a circus. There's no other word for it. And honestly, Dianne Feinstein, at the very least, when this is all behind us and Bret Kavanaugh, which I'm still sure that he's going to get confirmed, when this is all behind us, I think the Judiciary Committee should come back together, and one of the Republicans should bring forth it's not an amendment. Bring forth the issue that Dianne Feinstein needs to be held accountable for her actions, and they should vote out of committee a recommendation to have her brought up on ethics charges and brought before the Ethics Committee in the full House, or the full Senate, and possibly face expulsion for what she did. And that's, bottom of my heart, I think that has to happen. And finally, and this is the biggest thing that I get out of this, because I was watching all these comments of these people that were either actual survivors, which Ford may be. Ford may be a survivor. Ford may have been sexually assaulted and may be a victim, but she didn't prove it. I think there's something there with all my heart. I do think there's something there. I just don't think it was by Bret Kavanaugh. And the fact, and I said, this is the biggest thing to me. And this is the biggest one out of this whole thing. The lack of a support system of family and friends from the communities and churches that victims of sexual assault feel, no matter what, they can go to and have a sympathetic ear and support. Now, I put the church in there because I'm not talking about the Catholic Church. I'm not. I'm a church member. I go to church. I have a small sphere of influence there. I was an elder in the Church of Christ at one time. I'm hoping that if something happens to one of the women there, and they can't go to their friends or their husbands, that they can come to me. And know that I'm open and supportive and listening to them. And I think we have this lack of support system that comes out of everything that happened with the free love movement in the 70s, the progressive movement that's gotten God out of schools, that wants God out of our communities, that since 1973 it's been okay that we kill babies in the womb, that we've assaulted the family, and there's an ongoing assault on the nuclear family, mom, dad, and kids, by not even legalizing gay marriage. The Supreme Court did not legalize gay marriage. All they did was say it was okay for the states to go forth and do that. There is no federal law on marriage. That's a key point here. I don't want to get off in the weeds on that either. But we're destroying the family through the welfare state, and President Obama was like just going as fast as he could to destroy poor families out there with welfare, the Affordability Act, the ACA, Obamacare is what I like to call it. Keeping poor folks in the inner city poor, and destroying the family because it's better to have not the mom and dad not to be together, and the mom have more kids, get more money off the welfare state, and the state being dad and husband. All this cultural Marxism that has been filtering through our culture here in America, and America has a distinct, unique culture. All of this is combined. All this is combined to have a detrimental effect on why these women of sexual assault and rape, and these children that are being abused by pedophiles, and folks that were abused, women that were abused by Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby. Why didn't they feel that they had somebody that they could go to, that they could say, hey, don't judge me, but this is what happened to me. Can you help me? I think more than anything, yesterday's hearing exposed this lack of the support group, this sympathetic ear. That no matter what, you can come to me, and I'll listen, and I'll help you. I honestly, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart to see people like this. Because I know firsthand, not that it's been ever done to me, but I know firsthand what happens when a woman feels like she can't get out of an abusive relationship. I still think if I hadn't stepped in on this one young lady, I'm not going to say who she was or what my relationship to her is. She's not family. But I stepped in and had words with an abusive boyfriend. And I know I'm a Christian, and people might take me to task on this. Like, you're a Christian, you shouldn't threaten somebody. Had no business laying a hand on any woman the way he was doing to her. None. She didn't have a dad in her life. And her mom, what was her mom going to do? Her mom had issues of her own. Maybe it wasn't my place, but I saw a need there and I stepped in. I later told her about it. I later told her she didn't know about it at all. And I later told her, I said, I need to tell you this. This was after she got her life straightened around and everything. I said, I need to tell you this. And she wasn't mad at me. Matter of fact, she thanked me. And glad things didn't go any further than what it did. And glad she's in a better place now with the relationship. She's married. And I see her from time to time on Facebook and that. And she looks very, very happy. And I even say so. I said, I'm so glad you found somebody that respects you and loves you for who you are. I'm so glad about that. But I think because of our culture war in this country, this war on Christianity, God, the family. I think it's brought us to this point in this day and age where especially women have a hard time bringing these allegations, or young folks, kids, have a hard time saying, you know what, Uncle so-and-so touched me in an inappropriate place. Things like that. And I think that's the biggest casualty out of this whole thing. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I'm looking at this thing totally wrong. But I think if Christine Blasey Ford had a support group back then, someone she could talk to, if this indeed did happen, that it wouldn't have been 36 years in the making. And she could have got the real perpetrators put behind bars back then. Just my thoughts on it. I know I've gone a little long in this video, but hopefully I've given you some ideas, some of my observations. Like I said, it's not exhaustive. There's a lot of things that went on over the past few weeks. And I was glued to the TV yesterday. My wife was getting sick of me watching TV, so I came out of my office and finished watching the hearings yesterday up in my office. I was glued to the TV. I was so fascinated with everything. I was disgusted on one hand, and on the other hand, I was just fascinated by the whole process. So give me your comments in the link in the comment section down below here, folks. I appreciate them. I do. I appreciate the comments. If you ask a lot of people, I'll either give you a thumbs up or thumbs down. Sometimes they're noteworthy, and I actually make a comment back to you. I don't have a lot of time, but I do read all the comments. I just don't have a lot of time to answer all of them. And so I really like your thoughts on what I was talking about here today, my observations, and especially that final note about the support system for victims of sexual violence and rape. There needs to be one. And we need to get away from this idea that every woman needs to be believed. Yes, they do, as long as there's evidence there. And I think all women need a support. I think all women need some type of support where they can go to somebody and say, hey, this happened to me. Help me. Help me figure this out, what we need to do. Because there's still, in my America, we labor. And Chuck Schumer's got to be one of the most ignorant senators in the U.S. Senate when he says he does not have the presumption of innocence. The same way Senator Mazie Hirono out of Hawaii said the same thing, that he doesn't deserve. Deserve has nothing to do with it. Everybody that's a United States citizen has the presumption of innocence under our Constitution. And the burden of proof is always on the accuser. But we need to listen. Instead of believing all survivors, we need to listen to credible allegations. We need to listen to all allegations, and we need to help these victims find justice. I'm Dan Clements, your Constitutional Warrior. Folks, hopefully you enjoyed this video. And again, I'm going to try to put out a couple videos a week as my health allows me. And please forgive me if I don't put out as many as you would like me to do. Please, if you like what I'm doing in this video, please subscribe. Hit the notification button. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, and give me a comment, because I thrive on these comments. Folks, have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you in the next video. God bless.